Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you've ever felt your chest tighten when she pulls away, if you've ever typed a message and erased it 5 times because you're afraid of losing her, stay with me, because what I'm about to say may unsettle you. As a female psychologist, I see this pattern every day, and most men never realize the silent mistake that pushes women away faster than anything else. Before we go deeper, take a second to subscribe and like this video, because what you're about to hear isn't dating advice. It's psychological survival. Let me be direct with you. The moment you beg, over-explain, or chase, something inside her nervous system shuts down, not because she's cruel, not because she doesn't care, but because desire does not grow in an environment of emotional pressure. The male brain is often taught that persistence equals love. Female psychology does not read it that way. It reads it as emotional collapse, and collapse is not attractive. I want you to understand this without shame. Begging is not weakness of character. It's a signal of fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough, fear of silence. And here's the uncomfortable truth most men are never told. Women don't chase confidence because it's loud. They chase it because it feels safe, calm, grounded, unmoved. When you chase, your emotions become the center of the relationship. When you stop chasing, your presence becomes the center. There's a difference. One feels heavy, the other feels magnetic. Right now, you may be thinking, but if I don't try, I'll lose her. That belief is exactly what keeps men stuck. Attraction isn't created by effort alone. It's created by emotional polarity. She has to feel that you choose her, not that you need her to survive. The men who never beg are not emotionally distant. They are emotionally regulated. They don't threaten to leave. They don't demand reassurance. They don't explain themselves into exhaustion. They allow space because they trust their value without proving it. And when that shift happens, something powerful occurs inside her. Curiosity replaces certainty. Safety replaces pressure. She begins to lean in, not because you asked her to, but because your stillness gave her room to feel. This is where the chase truly begins. Here is the truth most men never hear from a woman who studies behavior for a living. The moment you stop begging, her brain starts working against her own certainty. And uncertainty is not your enemy. It is the birthplace of desire. Female attraction is deeply neurological. When everything is predictable, when your emotions are fully exposed, when she knows exactly where you stand at all times, her emotional system relaxes into neutrality. Neutrality feels safe, but it is not exciting. It does not pull, it does not chase, it simply rests, and rest kills pursuit. When you beg, you remove mystery. You collapse polarity. You hand her all the power and then ask her to give it back to you in the form of reassurance. That dynamic quietly drains attraction because it forces her into the masculine role, deciding, managing, reassuring. Over time, she doesn't feel wanted, she feels responsible. And responsibility does not create longing. Now listen carefully. Not begging does not mean playing games. It does not mean ignoring her or acting cold. It means regulating your emotional responses so she never feels like your stability depends on her behavior. That single shift changes how she experiences you at a visceral level. When you don't chase, her subconscious begins to ask questions. Why isn't he reacting the way other men do? Why does he seem calm? Why does he still feel present without demanding? These questions create emotional movement, and emotional movement is the beginning of pursuit. Men often confuse silence with weakness. In reality, silence paired with grounded presence is one of the strongest psychological signals you can send. It communicates abundance without saying a word. It tells her you have a life, an identity, a sense of self that existed before her and will exist after her. This triggers something ancient in female psychology. Women are drawn to men who appear emotionally self-contained because self-containment signals protection, leadership, and safety, not loud dominance, not arrogance, calm certainty. And here is where most men sabotage themselves. They break this calm by over-texting, over-explaining, or asking for clarity too soon. They try to secure the connection instead of allowing it to grow. But attraction is not secured through control. It's sustained through trust in your own value. When you stop begging, she doesn't feel abandoned. She feels invited to step forward, invited to invest, invited to chase what no longer chases her. And once she takes that step, the dynamic permanently changes. Here's the part that almost no one tells men. Desire is not about how much you give, it's about how much you preserve. Most men think that showing their entire emotional hand will prove love, but what it really proves is dependence. And dependence, no matter how sincere, is the single fastest way to extinguish attraction. Imagine this: every text you send, every call you make, every apology you repeat, it's like pouring water into a cup that already overflows. No matter how generous, it can't create thirst. Women are wired to respond to emotional scarcity, not abundance. Scarcity doesn't mean neglect. It means you remain centered, self-contained, and selective with your energy. That selectiveness makes her feel seen, but also that she has to earn your attention. That's when pursuit begins. When you beg, your nervous system becomes reactive. Anxiety bleeds through your words, your tone, even your timing. She feels it, even if she doesn't consciously recognize it, and her brain interprets it as instability. Attraction thrives on emotional balance. When you collapse, you remove that balance and replace it with tension that repels rather than draws. Stop confusing being present with being available at all costs. Being present means showing up fully when it matters, not chasing endlessly when it doesn't. This is a subtle shift that most men miss because they were taught that effort equals results. Effort does not equal desire. Desire is organic. It emerges when a woman feels both safety and challenge, connection and mystery. Here's a technique few men understand, but I see it work every day. Instead of responding immediately to her text or call, pause, reflect. Engage only when your energy is aligned with your value, not your fear. Watch her reaction. This pause is not manipulation. It's a demonstration of emotional self-respect, and self-respect is magnetic. Another truth: begging destroys power. Power is not about control. It's about influence through consistency and emotional regulation. The man who maintains composure, who does not flinch at her distance or indecision, is the man who creates longing. The chase flips when she realizes that losing you is a real possibility, but so is staying connected on your terms. Finally, understand this: she doesn't need you to prove yourself. She needs you to exist fully as yourself. The moment you stop chasing, you allow her to take action of her own will. And when she acts of her own volition, desire is no longer transactional. It is natural, it is intoxicating, and it is unstoppable. This is where men learn the difference between neediness and true attraction, and it changes everything. Here's a truth that hits harder than most men are ready for. Women are not drawn to what you say. They are drawn to how you carry yourself. Every time you beg, over-explain, or apologize for being human, you shrink in her perception. You make yourself smaller, quieter, and less significant. And attraction? Attraction thrives on size, presence, and emotional authority. Think of it this way: when a woman senses that you are fully grounded, fully occupied with your own purpose, your own life, she feels the magnetic pull of your stability. She senses that your happiness is not dependent on her approval. That's intoxicating. That's the invisible signal that triggers her chase. Because deep down, women want a man who can exist independently and still make her feel wanted, not through words, but through presence. Begging is the exact opposite. It communicates scarcity. It tells her, I need you more than I need myself. Scarcity is a subtle form of desperation, and nothing kills sexual tension faster than desperation. Desire is never built in the space of need. It grows in the space of intrigue. You might ask, so what do I do instead? You hold space. You regulate your emotions. You maintain dignity in every interaction. You let your energy communicate the truth. You are here, you are capable, and you are not waiting for validation. That's the invisible currency of attraction, and it's far more powerful than any compliment, gift, or grand gesture. Here's the kicker: when you stop chasing, she begins to invest in you emotionally, not because she has to, but because she wants to. That's when her mind starts creating stories about you, wondering what you're thinking, analyzing your calm demeanor, and when that happens, she becomes the pursuer without realizing it. Understand this: your absence of need does not create distance, it creates longing. She will notice it, she will feel it, and the very behaviors that previously made you anxious will now make her curious, drawn, and invested. This is why men who never beg are rarely seen as ordinary. They are experienced as rare. They are experienced as magnetic. They do not chase because they are secure in their value. And when a woman senses that, she doesn't just chase, she prioritizes, she desires, she commits her attention in ways begging could never inspire. The difference between chasing and being chased isn't luck, it's psychology. It's mastery over your emotions, your presence, and the invisible signals you broadcast without saying a word. And this mastery, it can be learned, it can be cultivated, it changes everything. When you understand this principle, everything in your relationships begins to shift. Let me break something down that most men never fully grasp. Women don't want to rescue you, fix you, or reassure you constantly. They want to be drawn to a man who is already whole, even if only partially visible. That's why begging, over-explaining, and chasing never works. It broadcasts incompleteness. It tells her you are fragmented and seeking her validation to feel whole. And nothing repels desire faster than a man who can't carry his own weight emotionally. When you stop chasing, you immediately signal a different kind of energy: stability, self-possession, and confidence. She notices it in subtle ways: the way you respond, the calmness in your tone, the lack of urgency in your timing. These micro-signals communicate that you are a man who exists with purpose, who has his own priorities, who does not live for approval. That's magnetic, that's irresistible. Here's a simple way to understand it. Begging is loud. It's emotional noise. Silence and composure are quiet, but they speak volumes. She feels them without words. She notices your absence of need. And when she notices that, her brain starts to fill the gap. She starts to imagine, to wonder, to pursue. This is desire being triggered on a subconscious level. Most men try to force connection, but true attraction is never forced. It grows organically in the space you create. That space is not emptiness, it is presence. Being present doesn't mean you're waiting. It means you are emotionally aligned with your own life. And that alignment pulls her toward you like gravity, without any chasing, without any pleading. One critical thing to understand: your self-respect is your most powerful tool. Every time you hold it, even when it's hard, you are silently teaching her the value of your presence. You're showing her that your attention is earned, not granted freely. That's a game changer. She will step forward to meet that standard, not because she's manipulative, but because women are wired to respond to strength and consistency. Now, this is where men stumble. They confuse ego with confidence. True confidence is quiet. It doesn't need to dominate, argue, or prove itself. It exists in your demeanor, in your choices, in the way you carry your energy. That's the energy she subconsciously tracks. That's the energy that makes her chase without you ever asking. Remember this: when you stop begging, you stop being predictable. You stop being available on demand. And that shift, it activates desire in ways nothing else can. She begins to value your attention, your time, and your presence, not because she feels obligated, but because she wants to. And once that dynamic takes hold, everything changes. This is the psychological leverage most men never understand, but once you do, you never go back. Now, let's go even deeper, because this is where most men completely miss the point. Attraction isn't about tactics or clever lines. It's about emotional architecture, the invisible structure of how you exist in her world. When you beg, you dismantle that architecture. You place yourself beneath her, and the natural hierarchy of desire collapses. When you stop begging, you rebuild it, solid, steady, unshakable. Think about what happens inside her when a man does not chase. Her brain starts to work in ways she can't control. She begins to assess value, not for what he says, but for who he is without needing her validation. She notices that he is grounded, that he is calm, that he doesn't panic at distance. These traits create a quiet tension, a gravitational pull that she can't resist. Men often confuse attention with attraction. She can notice you, compliment you, even flirt with you, and yet not feel compelled to chase. True pursuit emerges when she senses your emotional independence. That independence is the invisible boundary that separates desperation from desirability. It's the line she cannot cross until she chooses to, and that choice creates longing. Here's the subtlety most men miss. Attraction requires both availability and scarcity simultaneously. You cannot be fully available, emotionally transparent, and reactive at all times. That's chasing. You cannot be completely distant, cold, or unavailable. That's neglect. Mastery is holding the balance, showing interest without need, presence without pressure, engagement without collapse. That's the energy that sparks pursuit. One of the hardest lessons to internalize. Desire grows when she feels she must earn it. Not through manipulation, not through games, but through your consistent self-possession. When you stop begging, every interaction becomes meaningful. Every glance, every word, every gesture carries weight. That weight is magnetic. That weight triggers pursuit because it activates the ancient wiring in her brain that craves a man who is both capable and emotionally regulated. Most men never experience this because they're trapped in the cycle of proving themselves. They overtext, they over-apologize, they over-plan. They try to force desire into existence. But desire can't be forced. It emerges when a man's emotional state signals security, consistency, and self-respect. And here's the final piece of insight. Once you stop begging, you are no longer playing by the same rules as other men. You are no longer reactive. You are no longer predictable. You exist on a plane where her pursuit is inevitable. Not because she owes it to you, but because she is drawn to it. And once she begins to chase, everything in your relationship shifts. The power dynamic, the emotional tension, the desire, it all flips. This is why men who master this are rarely ignored. They are remembered, they are pursued, they are wanted, and that is the ultimate leverage in attraction. Here's the part most men never realize. Even after years of failed attempts, once you stop begging, you're no longer trying to control her feelings. You're creating an environment where her desire can naturally grow. And desire, true desire, is not built from pressure. It emerges from contrast, tension, and emotional freedom. That's the secret men are rarely taught. Attraction is psychological, not transactional. When you chase, you hand her the script. You tell her exactly how she should respond, how she should feel, even how she should act. But when you hold your ground, she writes her own script. And human psychology craves autonomy. When she feels autonomous, her actions toward you are no longer reactive. They are chosen, and that choice creates a magnetic pull stronger than anything you could force. This is why patience is not passive. Patience is powerful. It signals confidence. It signals abundance. It signals that you are capable of living fully, whether she chooses you or not. And when she senses that energy, something inside her shifts. Curiosity sparks, intrigue builds, emotional tension rises, and she begins to move toward you, not because she has to, but because she wants to. Remember this, the men who are chased are not men who are perfect. They are men who are emotionally anchored. They do not collapse under rejection. They do not over-explain. They do not beg. They maintain their presence and their value consistently, without compromise. That is the invisible magnet that pulls her in, again and again. Here's the last truth. Chasing destroys mystery, annihilates attraction, and flips the natural polarity of desire. When you stop chasing, you restore the balance. You allow her to experience longing, curiosity, and the excitement of the unknown. You create a space where she can choose you actively, not passively. And that choice, the one she makes willingly, is far more powerful than anything you could demand. So from today, begin to regulate your emotions. Preserve your dignity. Prioritize your life over validation. Communicate your presence, not your need, and watch how the dynamic changes. She will lean in. She will seek your attention. She will chase what once seemed just out of reach. This is the principle almost every man misses, and yet it is the foundation of lasting attraction. When you understand it, internalize it, and act on it consistently, you stop being one of the men who beg. You become the man she wants to chase, the man who commands desire without demanding it, the man who finally exists on a level that few ever reach. And that, my friend, is where real power and real attraction begins.